But there comes a point where this country has to say we have to get our own act together.
Talk about the refugee resettlement program.
The Obama administration's plans to admit 110,000 refugees into the United States through the Refugee Admissions Program.
Stop unvetted incoming refugees.
I would not use American ground forces in Syria.
One of the largest issues facing our country today, the refugee crisis.
Refugees.
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 Refugee.
Refugees.
Refugees.
Refugees. The Syrian refugee crisis is one of the largest issues facing our country and the world, and it must be addressed immediately by our new president and Congress in 2017.
In March of 2011, a violent war broke out in Syria. And since then, more than 2.6 million Syrians have been forced out of their country with no necessary means of refuge. They've been left to seek refuge status in other countries, including the United States.
The commitment that we've made with regard to refugees is actually, for this fiscal year, I believe is around 80,000. It's just 10,000 Syrian refugees this fiscal year.
Today, the United States has welcomed over 13,000 Syrian refugees into the States, and a goal has been set for future admittance of refugees.
The United States announces plans to take in 110,000 refugees over the next year. White House officials continue to assure the public that the refugee program is safe due to a lengthy and strict screening process.
This choice has alarmed many citizens and conservative politicians who oppose the influx of refugees because they see it as a threat to our national security.
The refugee program should not become a vehicle for terrorists to come murder innocent Americans.
This is a serious problem. It is a crisis, and it is a very important thing that our next president is going to have to deal with.
In fiscal year 2016, the Obama administration successfully resettled over 10,000 Syrian refugees into 38 different states. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was among many who believe that it is our humanitarian duty to assist refugees.
There are children suffering in this catastrophic war, and we need to do our part.
Almost everyone can agree that we need to do something.
Most Christians, all Christians, believe in treating people with compassion.
But we seem to disagree on what that something is.
People who are fighting to resettle refugees in the United States argue that the vetting process is very intensive, and as a result, refugee resettlement does not pose a threat to our national security.
We are in a constant process of adding tools as those tools become available. People who arrived even 8 or 9 years ago, and let alone 20 years ago, the process that they would have undergone then is nowhere near the process that we have now.
Still, some believe that we cannot properly vet the influx of refugees, and allowing them in is too large of a risk.
The reality is we may be opening ourselves up to something dangerous, and we have to protect the people that are here.
Although South Dakota was not one of the 38 states to allow Syrian refugees in, the South Dakota Majority Whip from the House of Representatives, Lynn DeSanto, told us that citizens are concerned.
The Syrian refugee message has really gotten into the minds of South Dakotans, that South Dakotans are concerned that these people might be being brought here.
The entire Midwest region has been affected both economically and socially by this movement, and some are nervous about the risk that the refugees pose to our communities.
It's clear that these people are a risk, and it's not that the population does not want to help refugees. We do. We just don't think it's wise to put ourselves at risk in the process.
With the security risk aside, political activists Amy Wilson and Tonchi Weaver argue that we can do better than uprooting refugees from their homeland.
But here's the other thing. Is it really fair to the refugees sometimes when we take them from another country, we drop them into a spot that they don't understand,
right.
They can't speak the language, and a lot of times they don't have the basic knowledge.
To many, establishing safe zones in Syria seems to be the answer.
Safe zones are like a temporary home for people where, when things improve in their homeland, in their home areas, they can return.
However, lobbyist Tina Mullally argues that the U.S. cannot simply create a safe zone or refugee camp. Rather, we need to pressure the United Nations to take action.
We can't go into other countries and force them into maintaining the refugee camps, but the UN can. So the US needs to put stronger sanctions and stronger demands on the UN to make sure that these refugee camps got medical care, they've got food, they've got water.
Ultimately, the South Dakotans that we interviewed disagreed with bringing Syrian refugees onto our soil.
You're putting the population at risk right there.
At this time, we cannot properly vet these people. We don't know if they're safe. We don't know who the bad guys are versus the good guys. We don't know who the terrorists are versus the non-terrorists. So to keep our own people safe, which is our responsibility, we have to say, I'm sorry, but we cannot accept Syrian refugees at this time.
I am not against people that would want to live here and have a good life, but I don't want them coming in here and destroying my country.
Amid all of the controversy surrounding the Syrian refugee crisis,
there is one thing that everyone can agree on.
This is a large issue, and something must be done.
So we don't have a say anymore in who comes in.
We've already had too many incidents in the United States since 9/11 that should not be happening at all. The effect it would have on us here would be devastating.
It's important because it endangers the safety of all Americans if we bring them to our soil.
the Syrian refugee crisis is one of the largest issues facing our country, and our new president and Congress must act on it immediately upon taking office in 2017.